It's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. It's wonderful to be back with you. Well, this is October 31st, and many people celebrate Halloween. I don't celebrate Halloween anymore, but lots of kids like to dress up and they go from house to house to go trick-or-treating. And or maybe they go to somebody's place or to church for a little party, like a harvest party. I would do that. And they get all sorts of treats now. Treats are really fun. But I don't celebrate Halloween anymore because there's too many scary things about it. It didn't used to be that people made it quite so scary, but it is more now, so I choose not to. But I thought I'd tell you a story that was a little bit scary. Have you ever heard anybody dare you to do something? So they might say, I dare you to go get that cookie off the kitchen counter. Well, Mom said no. She'd tell us when they were ready. You're a chicken, aren't you? I dare you. Well, lots of times people don't want to be called chicken. They don't want people to think they're afraid of things. So they'll go ahead and they will be tricked by a dare. They'll do something they really shouldn't do. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And the name of this story, it's in this book called The Cat in the Cage and Other Great Stories for Kids by Jerry Thomas. So I think you're going to like this one. A Skunk by the Tail. I dare you. Stephen looked down where his cousin Kyle was sitting on a branch. Past Kyle, the ground looked like a million miles away. Drop from this high up, he said. I dare you to do it. Kyle looked down. No way. I dared you first. Slam. Below them, the back porch door closed behind the boy's great-grandfather, Steuben. There are you two boys. A floating leaf made him look up. What? Are you trying to be killed? Hi, Grandpa Steuben, Kyle called. Stephen was about ready to drop down to the ground. I was not. Grandpa shook his head. All boys must be crazy. He looked back at his grandsons. If you fall down and break both your legs, don't come running back to me. He turned and headed back around the house to his garden. Stephen and Kyle loved the 2 weeks they spent every summer with at their great-grandparents' house. The boys were nearly the same age, and every year they had to prove again who was best. Stephen could climb faster. Kyle could finish the races a half a step ahead. Stephen won most games of checkers. Kyle won the games of dominoes. The porch doors opened again. Boys, boys. Well, I guess these cookies will grow cold and lonely. Stephen looked at Kyle. Coming, Grandma, they both shouted as they raced to the ground. Their cookies had just disappeared when Grandpa stomped in. All my hard work in the garden, and a skunk digs it up. What I need is a good shotgun. Grandpa, control your temper, Grandma scolded. We are teaching these boys to care for nature, not destroy it. The skunk does what all skunks do. Grandpa sighed and nodded. Then a half smile spread over his face. You remember Dieter from the old country? Grandma smiled too. He knew how to fix a skunk problem, eh? They both laughed in a quiet, distant way and then shook their heads. Kyle spoke up. What did Dieter do to the skunk? What? Oh, Dieter. He found a way to move a skunk without the spraying and stinking. He says if you pick up a skunk by the tail, it cannot spray you. Is that true? Stephen asked. What? A skunk by the tail? Yes, I guess it's true. Grandpa chuckled again and closed his eyes. Later, the boys sat on the stone wall by the garden, resting from a race through the woods. Hey, what's that? Kyle said, as he pointed down the wall. Stephen stretched out for a better look at the animal walking along the ground. It's a skunk. It must be headed back to Grandpa's garden. I dare you to grab it, Kyle said quietly. What? You lost your mind? Kyle rolled his eyes. Grandpa said it's safe to pick up a skunk by the tail. All we have to do is lie here. When the skunk walks underneath with its tail straight up, grab it. I dare you to do it, Stephen whispered. I dared you first. Kyle hissed back. Are you afraid? Stephen rolled over and reached toward the ground. Yes, he could probably reach the skunk. I don't want Kyle to think I'm afraid, he thought. Okay, I'll do it. Stephen watched the skunk as it wandered along, stopping to scratch and sniff as it went. When it came closer, he hardly dared blink. When it was right underneath him, he stopped breathing. I'm going to show you what the picture looks like. Hopefully you can see this. He slowly reached down toward the skunk's back. Then with a quick grab, he snatched the skunk by the tail and held it up. I got it! I got him! You really did! Kyle stared with his mouth hanging open. That's amazing! The skunk hissed and twisted, but Stephen held it tight. It can't spray as long as I'm holding the tail, he bragged. Kyle looked at the skunk's angry eyes. Do you think you're hurting it? Maybe you should put it down. If you say so, Stephen agreed. He bent over, then quickly straightened up. Wait a minute. If I set him down, he'll spray me. Kyle blinked. But you can't hold it forever. You have to put it down. And I'll show you what this picture looks like. Suddenly, he started backing away towards the house. Hey, this was your idea, Stephen said, trying not to panic. What am I supposed to do? Just drop it and run as fast as you can, Kyle said from a safe distance. Stephen looked around, but no better ideas showed up. He bent his knees and held the skunk out as far as he could. Then he turned the tail loose and spun, running faster than he had ever run before. It wasn't fast enough. Stephen smelled the skunk spray before he took 2 steps, still catching up with Kyle as they both ran straight for the back porch door. Grandma was there first. What is that awful? Boys, you didn't. He did, Kyle said as he raced up and stood beside her. Stephen grabbed the skunk. It was Kyle's idea, Stephen wailed as Grandma covered her nose with her apron. His eyes were burning and stinging now. Kyle, go get your grandfather. Then get that old blanket in the garage. Stephen, go stand over there by the hose. Before long, Grandpa arrived. What in the world were you boys thinking? Later, Grandpa, Grandma said. Stephen, take off those smelly clothes. Grandpa, wrap him up in the blanket. Then go to the store and get some tomato juice. Lots and lots of tomato juice. Stephen moaned again, ugh, when he sat in the yard wrapped up in the blanket. Kyle tried to slip away into his room. Not so fast, Mr. Bright Ideas, Grandma said. You go get the shovel and bury those clothes in the woods. But the look on Grandma's face stopped Kyle before the next words. He went to get the shovel, and look how his cousin was feeling. Much later, after much tomato juice, they all sat on the porch while Grandma combed Stephen's hair. Why would you grab a skunk? She asked. Kyle dared me to, Stephen admitted sheepishly. And this meant you had to do it, she said. What if he dared you to stand in front of a train? Would you do this too? I didn't want him to think I was afraid, Stephen said quietly. I'm sorry, Stephen. I thought it was okay to grab a skunk, Kyle protested. Grandpa said Dieter did it in the old country. Dieter didn't like to think, Grandma said, tapping her head. He did anything people dared him to do. I think maybe we've got the same problem here, Grandpa said in a loud voice. Not anymore, Stephen declared. I don't care what Kyle or anyone says. I'll do what I think is right, even if they think I'm a chicken. Me too, said Kyle. Wow, that was quite a lesson to learn about taking a dare. I can't think of too many dares that it's a good idea to take. People usually say it because it's risky. And I don't believe we should take risks where we could get hurt or somebody else could get hurt. Or we would do something that we just knew was wrong, like take cookies when we're not supposed to. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I hope you liked this story today. And I hope it wasn't too scary. So I want to say I love you. I really do. But more importantly, God loves you. And He always will. All right. Good night. And God bless you. Good night.